I'm actually a writer. I'm based in Sausalito, California. But when I was in my early 20s, I ran away from the Midwest to Alaska and I worked up there on commercial fishing boats. For about 3 years, I worked on an all-female commercial fishing boat, and I also longline halibut, I worked the herring season, and then I worked 5 years for the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, and I monitored salmon runs out in western Alaska. So I'm right now writing about oysters and ocean acidification. I just had a book come out called The Whole Fish. It was published by TED Books, and these are short books kind of organized around a single idea, kind of like TED Talks. It's short, it's interactive, it's a multimedia ebook, and it's produced by TED Conference. There's a whole how-to by Fink, how to prepare a salmon for outdoors, grilling, and the entire salmon. And then, yeah, there's 25 recipes with wine pairings for fish-friendly and salmon-safe wines.
I'm Fink, and I am the Whole Beast. So the Whole Beast is, I like to quantify it as a special niche catering company where I cook whole animals. And I source them from the smaller to medium farms, heritage breed. I like to say I don't discriminate. It's not just animals, it's also fish too. But I do the whole gambit from cow, goat, lamb, pig, fowl, and fish. But my shtick is I cook the whole animal. I kind of take the quote-unquote butcher out of the equation. We're not breaking it down into primal parts and small parts and parts that are very recognizable to the American public, where you get them at the butcher or the grocery. We're cooking the whole animal, and we're kind of going back in time.
Well, the whole fish, the idea of the whole fish, is kind of a trend that I've seen going on in California on kind of the West Coast, of people using whole animals. So they're using pig feet, or you'll see beef heart, or all different parts of animals showing up in a menu, and it's this way of showing respect to the animal, kind of using the entire animal, and it helps people, when you do it at home, save money. Use a different cut. There's only so many steaks on a cow. Well, with a fish, it's a similar idea, right? Instead of just having one big prime fillet, use the whole thing.
So the Whole Beast came about, I think it's a lifelong kind of education and I bring to the table. But what really kind of spawned it was when I had my son. And I was also trying to understand this farm to table movement. And it made me realize I kind of grew up in it. But as a chef, dealing with the meat purveyors and fish purveyors, I would always, ask them questions. But it would just be like a couple questions, what farm, what's the name of the farmer, what state is it, what type of breed. And with me, removing myself from the restaurants, and then I was actually going to the farms, and I was trying to explore what these heritage breeds, what's this all about. And I was, I go to the farm, and I was so welcome. It would just be me and my son, and they loved, oh, that's so great that you're, introducing them at such a young age to the farms and where animals come from. And then afterwards, I would buy some of their meat, or they would give it to me. It's like, just, give us your feedback. And I was blown away, especially with the pigs the pig farms I was checking out, how great the meat was. And it was literally night and day from the commodity meat that we, that most of us eat.
Well, sustainability, the idea is it's something to keep happening forever. So say a salmon run, like Bristol Bay, 50% of the world's sockeye salmon come from Bristol Bay. And they have it so that they have fish counters on every river monitoring this. These are all wild runs. There's no hatcheries in Bristol Bay. So there's a lot of biodiversity. So the numbers fluctuate, but they always come back. And they come back about 30, 40, 50 million fish come back every summer. Well, there's a problem right now because they want to put a giant mine there. It's called the Pebble Mine, where multinational companies will be mining copper and gold, and it'd be roads going in and out. They'd be using chemicals that could wipe out the salmon run, which also means wiping out the indigenous people that rely on them, all the other animals that rely on them, the entire fishing industry. So here you have sustainable, the salmon run, and very, very unsustainable copper gold mine. And that's actually still in the works. The EPA has stepped in to evaluate whether or not that can go forward. The salmon really exemplifies this idea of interconnected ecosystems. It moves it is born in a lake, moves into or a river, then it goes downriver and lives in the ocean for about, depending on the salmon, it can be anywhere for a year to 6-7 years really, then goes back up to the river to spawn. And about 136 different species rely on that for a food source. The fish are eaten by, say, eagles and bears and otters, and they're spread throughout the land, and then it fertilizes the land with minerals from the ocean. And this then, in turn, it helps to grow the native trees and willows and shrubs. So when the rain goes through those, it filters them. And so the rivers are cleaner because of it, and there's more shade. So it's creating more salmon habitat. So they're really kind of this amazing connection between the water, the air, the earth. So that's why I use them quite a bit there. So it really is this metaphor of how all these ecosystems, how everything we do is interconnected.
I always believe that food tastes better with a larger group of people. There's something about that whole animal being cooking that kind of really brings out the hunter-gatherer kind of DNA in us. I like to cook open fire, so I kind of build the outdoor kitchen to the landscape, to the animal itself, and that's another kind of gathering point. Everybody loves being around a fire, seeing these contraptions that I've come up with throughout the years. It's very interactive, and that's what I like. So I think that kind of separates me from quite a few other people.
And I also go into a bit about forage fish and like sardines and herring and anchovies, and these are really fish that we should eat more of. Right now, 90% of them are being made into fish meal or fish oil, which is being fed to industrial farms and industrial fish farms, so both pork and beef and fish. And it's a tremendous waste, wreaking havoc on ocean ecosystems to be eating these fish, to be eating the large fish. Instead, we should be eating the small fish. They're very healthy, they're very plentiful, and and they're very delicious. So there's no reason we aren't eating those. John planned the dinner, but I really asked him for salmon eggs, and because I really like those. But no, John is an expert at preparing entire animals, and he sources just the best of the best. So he planned it, and he prepared the entire thing. It was Chinook season, so it was a California wild Chinook. But yeah, so the salmon eggs are one of my favorites, and so I think what he did with those is he had little rye rounds, and there was some creme fraiche, some dill and some chopped onions or shallots, and then the salmon eggs with that, and they were wonderful. But I remember we also ate some of the skin first. He rubbed that down with a porcini, fennel kind of spice rub, and then so we were kind of able to pick at that before the actual salmon was ready.
Maria kind of inspired me to do that, and it wasn't from the fish at that time. The salmon eggs develop later on when they run in upstream, but they were frozen. It was a quick 45-minute brine, sugar and salt, almost equal parts, and then I just accented it with some like fennel, onions, stuff that we kind of used as an accoutrement, like the chives, the chervil, the red onions, bay leaf. I think I put a little red chili in there, and it was just a quick 45-minute brine, but it was a warm brine. So when it's warmer, it's really able to accept a lot of those, the salt, the sugar, and all those aromatics that you're putting into it. And then we just, rinse it off and slightly dry it and then pack it in there. And yeah, it turned out great, because I've done like more of a 36-hour, 24, 12-hour, but this was a much quicker version. But I also was kind of more privy to it because we weren't going to camouflage it with all the salts. We were going to taste the salmon egg itself too.
Eating sustainably is just where you find it, what you find, is it seasonal, and does it cost too much? because sometimes the higher quality food costs more, and if you're serving 10 people, 20 people, cost can be an issue with that. So that's another reason to think of like, okay, what's a way I can use this more than once? So if you're making something with crab, can you make a sauce with the crab shells as a basis, toss the shells and put the meat on something, so it goes a little bit further as well. So that's what I think, the whole eating sustainably, whether it's red meat or produce or seafood, is the idea is kind of using less of it. So what are creative ways that you can use less of it but buy really high quality?
I like to work around the seasons in California, here in the Bay Area, with all these small farms. I just draw on that. So like right now, we're artichokes, spring onions, spring carrots, leeks, citrus are in season. So I really like to emphasize that. And then I like to, we're cooking at a winery. A lot of the wineries now have farms. So, besides using their wine, I want to use their vegetables and just, great bragging rights and good conversation piece. And just keeping it simple, too. Why get your corn from Kansas City, Missouri, when, we can wait till August and get it from Brentwood?
It's not all seafood farming is bad. The big carnivorous fish are problematic, the tuna and the salmon, but there's a McFarland trout that it's an all vegetarian feed that they give it. Its waste is put on horse pasture, and it's very, very, very healthy, and it's very delicious. Oyster farms are wonderful. Each oyster cleans, I think, 30 gallons of water a day in a bay. So they actually help the bays they're in, and they don't need to be fed anything. They feed naturally on what's there. And so there's a lot of great things we can be eating. Clams, mussels, those are also wonderful. Abalone farms, So it's just a matter of really diversifying our diets and choosing to eat a little bit differently. Like I said, eat the salmon belly one night, eat the skin another night, and then have some sardines and have some clams, so that we can take the pressure off the fish that are being overfished, and we can take fewer fish out of the ocean.
Belly has most of the fat, so it's really juicy. You can really kind of cook it medium, and it's that fat just melts, and it's just a great luscious mouthfeel, nice and juicy. As I said, it just discarded into the fish scrap, and the help uses it. But I try to keep as much on as possible. Sometimes, it gets a little skinny and doesn't look too nice.
A lot of times food that's more sustainable also tends to be better for you. So seafood like wild salmon, sardines, herring, oysters, all of those are very sustainable fish, and they're also very good for you. Whereas fish like tuna and swordfish, the larger fishes, have quite a bit of PCBs and mercury in them, and so they're not quite as good for you. And so that's one reason. The other reason is that just this the whole fish. My book, The Whole Fish, the idea of eating the whole fish, it serves as a metaphor for how all these ecosystems are interrelated. And so what we do, everything we do, impacts something else, and then that comes back later to us and impacts us or our children or in some way. And so there is a good reason to care about that. And I think that it's also something where that for a lot of guests are interested in that. And most of your sustainable food also tends to be much higher quality. So Pacific wild salmon is just a much higher quality fish than a farmed Atlantic salmon. And so that's what you want to be feeding your guest, really. There's a recipe in the book that a chef from Sea Restaurant in Vancouver gave me, which is salmon salt. So you dry the bones, grind them up, and mix them 1 part salt, and then use them almost like a dry fish sauce. Well, with sustainability, I think another word in seafood people use a lot is transparency. You kind of want to know where your fish comes from. And so that's when you buy it somewhere, and you just ask them, where is it from? And is it sustainably sourced? Is it a wild Pacific salmon that's from nearby? Then it's gonna be great, And you can get the Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch and look at that and see, well, what's sustainable. You might not want to feed your guests shrimp or catfish from China or farm salmon or things along those lines. And because they're not sustainable, there's some things that go on with producing them that you don't want to eat, you don't want to feed to people. They're not necessarily in environments that are natural. So when you think about it and you think, well, you want it to be creative, right? Not just sustainable, but fun, creative, multi-course. So think about using different parts of one animal, or how can you use the eggs as an appetizer and then use the meat for dinner, or make ramen noodles and you can make bacon out of this fish skin. So you can use bacon skin, you can use the eggs, you can use some of the meat. That way you can stretch it a lot further as well. So you can get one fish, which costs a lot less to buy a whole fish, and then use all the different parts and different courses of a dinner party. I don't think of it as educational. I think it more of as a celebration. So it is the Chinook salmon are here, and it's time to celebrate that. It's that time of year. And then you eat Chinook salmon until you're sick of it, and then the crab arrive, and you celebrate crab. It's crab time. So it's not really that you're so much educating people, but that you're celebrating the season, you're celebrating the bounty of what's there, and you're kind of doing what all the animals out there in the bay and the ocean are doing, is that they're excited the salmon are here. And then they're going to be excited the sardines are here, and excited the herring are there. And so that's really something that it's a way of celebrating the season rather than just educating.
In my backyard, I had this bay leaf tree from my neighbor, who's an Italian, who smuggled it over from Italy. But now it's this magnificent bay leaf tree, and I use it for my events for garnishing around the animals. But my wife and I, we just cut about like 9 of these strips down and turn it into a fish basket. So we were able, instead of like using tongs to flip the fish, we could just flip that. And then while it was on the grill, the bay leaves were burning, so it was also giving us some nice aromatics and smoke to the fish. And since it was still green, it wasn't going to go up in flames. It was just going to smoke, so the thing didn't dissipate throughout the 35-minute cooking process. Proper planning prevents poor performance, but I really enjoy, thinking about it and then designing the menu, what type of the year it is, what's in season, talk to them like, oh, I don't like this or like that, and kind of customize it, cater it to their needs, and then take it from there. That's the part I enjoy the most, is the planning, the thinking, the designing, the engineering of it, especially with the whole beast. Whole animal cooking, you can't do it in a restaurant because everything works on a full sheet tray and those ovens. And most whole animals are much bigger than that. So you have to think outside the box. You have to have like special gear. When you're cooking for the public, there's no second chances, and you don't want to look like a Jaffe. You really, you want to know what you're doing. That was actually the first time I've tasted a salmon so early in the season. So that was like the spring Chinook. So they're only eating krill at that time, which is that really, really tiny shrimp. And that's also, that really gives it that brilliant color too, the salmon, that vivacious orange. And they haven't fattened up on the sardines and the anchovies that they'd have during the middle of the summer. And so I just noticed how clean it was, but it still had a good fat to it, and it was still. I was really moved by how it was really a tasty fish. The potatoes were pretty plain Jane. They were just new potatoes, new fingerling potatoes. I par blanched them, which means I boiled them in water, so they were kind of pre-cooked, and then we just finished them on the grill, so they got crispy skin. I tossed them in olive oil and salt, and they got a touch of smoke on there. But it's a nice way to have that potato. So it's like kind of like a twice baked potato, but I par cooked it in the boiling water too. The skin was rubbed with porcini and salt. So porcini powder, dried porcinis. You ground them up to a fine dust. Kosher salt, fennel seed that was grinded to a powder, and fennel pollen. And then I kind of rubbed the cavity and the skin with that. And I rubbed the skin with that like about 3 times because you want to leach out a lot of that liquid from the skin so you can crisp up. And then that gets it kind of crispy, crunchy. Nothing excites me more than using really good wine to make a sauce, especially, as I said, like expensive wine. So they gave me like 3 bottles of Pinot Noir. I just reduced it down into a syrup. I added some aromatics like porcini, bay leaf, and black peppercorn and sugar. And I just got it down to a syrup, and that was kind of like the finishing sauce. And that just really concentrates that whole bottle of wine. And it was pretty magnificent with that fish. So you had, salmon is rich and kind of fatty, so you want something sweet. Salmon always is crying for something sweet. It works well with fruits, and so like that red wine syrup really worked well in that aspect too. Well, presentation is a lot too on how you serve it. I like to keep it rustic. I don't want it too foo-foo. Flowers are nice, but I like the, I have this huge wood cutting board my dad made for me, and I can display the whole animal on there and carve and serve there, and it's very interactive where people come up, it's like, oh, I like the leg, oh, I like the rib meat, I like the belly, oh, I want the cheeks, I want the eyeball or something, and then kind of pick and choose, oh, I want the tenderloin or something like that. And I'm able to carve, and there's elbow room, and I'm also able to serve, and they're able to kind of, it's like an action station. They're able to come up and talk, and some people like to try to sneak a bite out and stuff like that. But I love that, because people are eating with their hands and being very interactive.
The evening has a narrative arc, right? It has the anticipation of people showing up, then everybody's there, and it's kind of chaotic. You're talking to people, but making sure there's food going out. And then it kind of winds down, and you can sit there and put your feet up and eat what's left on the cheese tray, and drink what's left in the wine glass, and just think about what happened with the evening. I don't know, but I think there's an adrenaline high for people who like to entertain. I think it's sort of, the anticipation, and then the crowd, and then the aftermath. But I think everybody has a great party.